everyone. We would now discuss the second topic in Module 6, which is the self-society and environment. But before that, I will first introduce to you myself and my co-group mates who had the task to doing this video presentation.
Lead me, Lord, lead me by the hand and help me face the rising sun. Comfort me through all the pain that life may bring. There's no other hope that I can lean upon.
This time around, let's identify the relationship, the self-recognition with our society and environment. But before I go further, let's define first the self-individual self. Self is commonly defined by the following characteristics. First, separate. Second, self-content and independent. Third, consistent. Fourth, unitary. And the last is private. In the role of the self noted earlier, one has to pay attention not just on how one deals with oneself, but also on how one interacts with other individuals in personal relations. One responds to the demand for an ethically responsible care for the self by making full use of the four ethical theories or frameworks. According to Aristotle, virtue ethics teaches one cultivate from his own intellect as well as her character to achievement niya in her lifetime. For me, self is separate because it means that the self is autistic from other self. The self is always unique and has its own identity. One cannot be another person, even or twins, distinct from each other, no matter how similar you are with your brothers or sisters. You are not your brothers, and you are not your sister, and you are not your brothers. It's not you. That's why you should not compare in other self, because no matter what you do, you are unique and different from other self. According to John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism through seemingly a hedonistic theory given its emphasis on maximizing pleasure and minimizing twin elements, the human elements adopt the animalistic and adopt the merely selfish. Mills did on the earlier version of the utilitarianism, the one exposed by Jeremiah Bentham, which first toys that makes in action good, it's that bring about the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Self-contained and independent because it itself it can exist. Distinctness allowed to be self-contained with our roots, characteristics, and relation. It does not require any other self for it to exist. It means further that you don't need to comply requirements for you to exist. You have the freedom to believe what you want to believe. You are allowed to continue your truth, your feelings and emotion, or express them through action. To Kant theology, the rational faculty of moral agent which see above merely sentenced beings. Kant's principle of universality challenges the moral above sentenced beings. Agent to think behind her own predilection and desires, and to instead consider what everyone else to do. His principle humanity and itself teaches one always truth, humanity, whether in her own self or in any other individual. Self is consistent because it has a personality that is enduring and therefore can be expected to versus provide sometimes. It constantly and longevity studied. Describe a measured lens that particularly separates characteristics, tendencies, and potentialities are more or less. This Aristotle virtue ethics teaches one cultivate from his own intellect as well as her character to achievement niya in her lifetime. As for me, an Aristotle virtue unitary because it is the center of all the experiences and fruits that one time a certain person This life the cheat command for individual, where all the processed emotion and thoughts coverage to self gives meaning to all of these emotion, experiences, truths, and everything that goes in our mind, guys. So, of course, it is also the self that decide a particularly experience is significant or not.
The relying of the personal also extends to one's treatment of other persons within one's network of close relations. In utilitarianism's recognitions of the greatest happiness, what must rule is not one's own subjective notions of what is pleasurable. Instead, the greatest happiness, in this case, where everyone is affected by this particular set of relationships, is must take precedence in one's choice of actions. And in natural law theory, through its recognitions of the inviolable value of human life, whomever it belongs to, immediate offers can ethic of interpersonal relationships. And then, in natural law theory, again, the value of human life, of proper education, and of promoting the truth and principles social life must be upheld by the individual in her emotions with family and friends. And in Kant's deontology, recognizes the principles of humanity as end in itself, as a cornerstone of ethical decision making, because this theory recognizes the full autonomy of every single rational agent. In Kant's deontology, thus one must not abuse either oneself nor one's fellow human beings by treating them as mere means. One must always that humanity in his own, whether in oneself or in any, always as end in itself, as that Kant himself said. Kant reminds us that one should never reduce a human being by herself or treating them in a bad way. And finally, in Aristotle's virtue theory, he teaches that one must always find and act on the necessities whether in treating oneself or any other human being. And Aristotle's virtue theory teaches that one must always find and act on the necessities whether in treating oneself or any other human being. This mesotis points to the complexity of knowing what must be done in a specific moral situation, a measure that does not necessarily apply to a different situation, or which involves identifying the relevant feelings that are involved and being able to manage them. In this attitude of Aristotle's virtue theory teaches that attitude is a compound of feelings that one has, but these are feelings the most probably has not sifted through. Therefore, is one Aristotelian virtue that clearly applies to treating oneself and other people close to oneself fairly with much circumspection. It happens too often in one's personal relationship with others whom one is close to that feelings get in the way of forming refers to the tendency of many people to lapse into an attitude that tends to be hurtful to others one is closest to.
Social life in an immense context in the global village. The first, what if the expectation of a particular society come into contact with Orwell's most fundamental values? The The explanation of the society context is an external context placed in opposition with society, the government, or a cultural tradition or social norm of some kind. The next is what is utilitarianism? The utilitarianism to address the issue about ancestral land and Nell's ethical framework of utilitarianism. It still stands to its adoption, which is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Through this, one cannot claim a land which may affect the others. The next, indigenous group. Prior to the issue about indigenous group, utilitarianism states that whoever it benefits the land the most, the legality and ownership will then be surrendered to them. As for the issue in the global arena, utilitarianism suggests that an action done, for instance, by a Filipinos within the Philippines territory typically cannot remain a matter for Filipino only. If such an action can potentially affect those outside the border of the nation, it's here from other ethical frameworks. In the natural law, there were recognized natural law, there were always uploads the principles that must guide the individual in whatever action they should take, especially if it impacts the larger society. Human life, cultures, and families must be considered when the larger whole is at stake. This is because there is no harmonious social life in the people in the society. Do not value human life, but on the other hand, the demand of the natural law for a peaceful and orderly social life can be put in danger by acts of criminality and terrorism, and those acts must be condemned. Though Immanuel Kant is a proponent of a deontology, he argues with the use of principle of universal disability in dealing with the issues about content. In the society, there's the manner of most rules that should dictate one's choice of acts. However, one is able to follow any heteronymous laws is such law is in accordance with one's understanding of moral duty. And everyone must understand why is it the right thing to do, and not because someone else imposed you to do so. Since people in the society must make sure the law and rules are in line with what universal moral duty will prescribe, last but definitely not the last. And Aristotle virtual ethics prescribed method as a guide to all the actions taken by a person in dealing with a community. The next, the virtue. Virtue is stability, contributions, among others, are a socially oriented Aristotelian virtues. Thus, a person must be guided by those virtues in every village. In the society, however, one must take note that those virtues are not fixed. Point which means that one will have a message that is determined by the particular context. Example is an YFW who must balance the needed for cultural on one hand, keeping one Filipino.
It's all about a closing that is really an opening. So now we should already have a more or less idea on how to make informed more moral decision. You should in this point have sufficient mental and effective equipment to arrive at sound judgment for cases, in discussion, or for enhancing real life decision. So these are four frameworks, however, have proven to be some of the most influential in human, though, and should serve as an introduction to other theories or to further discussion on moral philosophy. So this is a cynical way these frameworks are sometimes employed. Use them as needed to justify what to do in particular decision or situation. And the more productive use of these frameworks instead to enjoy them as beginning guide to one's further exploration. And in the end, there is only a beginning because we do not have a computer program here and automatically calculate what is the right thing to do in the given situation.
To Sir John Repetition, sir, thank you so much for the privilege and chance to make a video presentation like this. And to my equally competent classmates, thank you very much and God bless us all.